The first 7 seconds after you walk into a room, decide who people think you are. That part you might already know. But here is what almost nobody tells you. The next 7 minutes decide something even more important: whether you are seen as a leader or just another performer trying too hard to be liked. And here is the twist that changes everything. Most people spend those 7 minutes desperately trying to prove they are charismatic, smiling, more talking, more explaining, more, and that exact desperation is the thing that quietly kills their status in the eyes of everyone watching. Today we are going to talk about something almost nobody discusses called shadow charisma. And by the end of this video, you will understand why the most magnetic people in any room are often the ones saying the least, and why saying less can make you more unforgettable than saying more ever could. If you want to understand the psychology behind real lasting presence, make sure you subscribe right now, because this is going to completely change how you walk into rooms from now on. Let's start by understanding what most people get wrong about charisma. The common idea is that charisma is something you generate. It is energy you produce, warmth you radiate, enthusiasm you display. And to some extent that is true in the first few seconds. But there is a second, deeper layer of charisma that operates on a completely different principle. This layer is not about what you give, it is about what you withhold. Think about the historical figure of Casanova, not for romantic reasons, but for a specific psychological tactic. He was famous for one thing: was never fully available, not emotionally, not informationally, not even physically present in the way people expected. He created what we can call an information gap, a space between what people could see about him and what they could not, and that gap is where fascination lives. This brings us to the first tactic, the information gap. Most people in social situations, especially when nervous, have an instinct to over-explain. When asked a simple question about themselves, they give a 5-minute answer covering their entire life story, their job, their background, their opinions on everything related to the topic. This feels natural because explaining yourself feels like connection. But here is what it actually does: it closes the gap completely. It gives the other person everything immediately. And once everything is given, there is nothing left to wonder about. The strategic alternative is not to be secretive or mysterious in an artificial, theatrical way. It is simply to answer questions completely, but briefly. When someone asks, "What do?" you do not need to deliver your entire career history. A short, genuine answer followed by turning the conversation back to them leaves your own story open-ended. And an open-ended story is infinitely more interesting than a fully told one, because the human mind is wired to fill in gaps. And when people fill in gaps about you themselves, they often imagine something more interesting than reality, and more importantly, they become invested in finding out more. The second tactic is what we will call the unfazed gaze, and this connects directly back to the same principle of stillness we have discussed before. Most people, when they make eye contact, especially with someone they want to impress, have an almost automatic urge to smile, quickly look away, or fill the silence with words. This happens because direct eye contact without immediate social signaling feels vulnerable. It feels like too much exposure. But here is the thing: maintaining calm, steady eye contact without the immediate need to smile or break away communicates something powerful. It communicates that you are comfortable in your own presence without needing constant feedback from the other person. This is sometimes called the Greek method, because it echoes the same stoic stillness we have talked about before. The goal is not to stare intensely or to make anyone uncomfortable. The goal is simply to remove the reflexive need to soften every moment of eye contact with a smile, when you can hold a gaze calmly and then look away on your own terms rather than out of social anxiety. It sends a subtle signal that you are not performing for approval. The third tactic is the most counterintuitive one, and we will call it selective approval. Most people in social situations operate on what we can call default warmth. They smile at everything, they nod along with everything, they validate almost everything anyone says, because they believe constant positivity makes them likable. And to some extent it does, but it also makes that warmth meaningless, because if you smile and nod at literally everything, then your smile and your nod carry no information. They are just background noise. The alternative is selective approval. This means your positive reactions, your genuine smile, your enthusiastic agreement, your visible interest becomes something that is given in response to something specific, not as a default setting. When someone says something genuinely interesting or insightful or funny, that is when your engagement increases visibly. When someone says something average, your response remains calm. And neutral, not cold, just neutral here, is what this does over time without you ever explaining it. The people around you start to notice that your positive reactions mean something. They start to notice that getting a genuine reaction from you feels like it was earned. And the moment something feels earned, it becomes valuable. This is not about withholding kindness as a manipulation tactic. It is about making sure your reactions remain honest signals rather than automatic noise. Now let's bring this all together, because these three tactics work as a system, not as isolated tricks. When you stop over-explaining yourself, you create an information gap. When you maintain calm, unfazed eye contact without anxious smiling, you remove the appearance of seeking approval. And when your positive reactions become selective rather than constant, your engagement becomes a form of reward rather than a default state. Together, these three things create what we are calling the charisma of absence. You are not filling every space, you are not seeking every approval, and you are not validating every interaction. And paradoxically, this absence is what draws attention rather than pushing it away. Here is why this works at a deeper psychological level. Human attention is naturally drawn toward things that require interpretation. When someone gives you everything, immediately your brain processes it and moves on. There is nothing left to think about. But when someone gives you partial information, when their reactions are not fully predictable, when their warmth is not unconditional, your brain continues processing that person. Even after the interaction ends, you find yourself thinking about what they meant, wondering what they thought, replaying the conversation. This continued mental engagement after the interaction is essentially what we experience as being unforgettable. So how do you start practicing this without it feeling fake or forced? Because that is the real risk. Here, if you try to perform mysteriousness, it will come across exactly as what it is, a performance. The first step is simply practicing brevity in low-stakes conversations. The next time someone asks you a simple question, practice giving a genuine but shorter answer than you normally would, and then redirect attention back to them. Notice how the conversation naturally continues without you needing to fill every gap. The second step is practicing comfortable silence in conversations. Instead of feeling the need to respond instantly to everything, allow small, natural pauses to exist. This is not about being cold. It is about not treating silence as something that needs to be immediately fixed. The third step is becoming aware of your default reactions. Notice how often you smile, nod, or verbally agree out of habit rather than genuine response. This is not about becoming less warm as a person. It is about making your warmth more intentional so that when it shows up, it actually means something. Here is what I want you to understand about all of this: real charisma, the kind that makes people remember you long after you have left the room, is not about generating more energy. It is about generating the right amount of energy at the right moments and leaving enough space for other people's minds to do the rest. The person who explains everything, performs everything, and approves of everything becomes forgettable, not because they are boring, but because they leave nothing for anyone else to wonder about. The next time you walk into a room, remember those first 7 seconds will happen no matter what, but what you do in the 7 minutes after is where the real impression is built. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in those 7 minutes is simply leave a little more unsaid. If this video gave you a new way to think about presence and charisma, make sure you subscribe, because next time we are going deeper into how to read whether someone actually respects you or is just being polite, and the subtle signs that reveal the difference.